Natalie had always been the responsible one, while other kids in high school were saving up for prom dresses or weekend trips. She was working extra shifts at the local diner to help her parents with bills. It started small, covering the electric bill when it was overdue, buying groceries when the fridge was empty, or giving her little brother, Ethan, lunch money when their parents couldn't. At the time, it felt natural. She was just helping her family. By the time she graduated from college, nothing had changed, except now. She had a real job and a real paycheck. Working in finance, she finally had the stability she had always dreamed of. But instead of enjoying it, most of her money went straight to her family. When her parents' struggling business couldn't keep up with rent, she paid it. When Ethan, now in his 20s and still unemployed, maxed out his credit cards, she bailed him out. Every month, without fail, her paycheck disappeared into endless emergencies. She kept telling herself it was temporary. Once Ethan found a job, once her parents got the business back on track, things would get better. But months turned into years. And instead of things improving, the demands only grew. It wasn't just about necessities anymore, it was vacations, new clothes, expensive gadgets, all under the excuse that they deserved it. Every time she hesitated, her mother's voice would echo through the phone, guilt laced into every word. Natalie, we're your family. You wouldn't leave us struggling, would you? And every time she gave in, she sacrificed everything, her savings, her social life, even her dreams of moving to a new city, all because she believed family was supposed to come first. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, her love and loyalty were being taken for granted. Natalie had always believed that family came first. It was the way she had been raised, to support each other no matter what. But over time, she started to feel less like a daughter and more like an ATM. The requests had once been for essentials, rent, utilities, food, but now, they were for things that had nothing to do with survival. Ethan really needs a new car, her mother had said one evening, her voice dripping with expectation. His old one just isn't reliable anymore. Natalie hesitated. Can't he buy one himself? He's had plenty of time to find a job. Her mother sighed dramatically. You know how tough the job market is. You make good money, sweetheart. It's just a little help. A little help. That was the excuse they always used. A little help when her parents wanted a new kitchen remodel. A little help when her father decided to invest in a doomed business venture. A little help when Ethan wanted to take a mental health break from even looking for work. But the worst was when they demanded that she co-sign a loan for her parents' new house. It's an investment, her father had insisted. You'd be helping secure the family's future. When she hesitated, Ethan chimed in with his usual entitlement. Come on, Nat, you make 6 figures. It's not like you're struggling. Struggling? Maybe not financially, but emotionally? She was exhausted. No matter how much she gave, it was never enough. And the moment she even thought about setting boundaries, she was made to feel like the selfish one. One night, she checked her bank balance and felt her stomach drop. She had been working tirelessly for years, but somehow, she had barely saved anything for herself. Meanwhile, her parents had just come back from a vacation to Hawaii, one she had unknowingly paid for. That was the moment she realized, her family didn't see her as a person with her own dreams and struggles. To them, she was nothing more than a bottomless wallet. Natalie had spent years being the family's financial safety net. But something inside her snapped when she saw the vacation photos her parents had posted online. Smiling on a yacht, sipping cocktails, lounging at a 5-star resort, all while she was drowning in stress. Working overtime just to keep up with their endless demands. The worst part? They hadn't even bothered to tell her they were going. She sat in her apartment, staring at her dwindling savings. This wasn't a family supporting each other, this was exploitation. And she had allowed it to happen. No more. The next morning, she made her first move. She called the bank and froze all joint accounts she had foolishly set up with her parents. No more easy withdrawals. No more instant transfers. If they wanted money, they'd have to ask her directly. And this time, she wouldn't just hand it over. Then, she pulled up her company's HR portal and changed her direct deposit to a new bank, one her family didn't have access to. Within an hour, her money was protected. That same evening, she received the call she had been expecting. "Natalie, there's something wrong with the account," her mother said, her voice tight with frustration. "I tried to pull money for the mortgage, but it's not going through." "Oh," Natalie said, feigning concern. "That's strange. Maybe you should call the bank?" Her mother sighed impatiently. "I was hoping you could just transfer it manually. We're really counting on you." For the first time in her life, Natalie didn't hesitate. "I can't." Silence. "Can't," her mother echoed. Won't?" Natalie took a deep breath. Both. The yelling started immediately. Accusations of selfishness, guilt trips about everything we've done for you, and threats about tearing this family apart. But this time, Natalie didn't cave. "You know what tears a family apart?" she cut in, her voice sharp. "Treating your own daughter like a walking ATM. You took thousands from me, knowing I had my own future to plan for. You made me feel guilty for even questioning it. But I'm done. From now on, you can figure things out without me." She hung up before her mother could respond. The next day, she sent one final message to the family group chat. "I love you, but I will no longer be financially supporting anyone. My money is mine to manage. And if you can't accept that, then maybe the issue isn't me, it's you." Then, she muted the chat, blocked the calls, and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she felt free. The fallout was immediate. Within 24 hours, Natalie's phone was flooded with missed calls and frantic messages. At first, the tone was desperate, her mother pleading for help, insisting that the mortgage was overdue. The utility bills were piling up, and they had no way to cover the expenses without her. Her father, on the other hand, took a more accusatory approach, reminding her of all the sacrifices they had made to raise her, as if she somehow owed them a lifetime of financial support. Ryan, unsurprisingly, was the most entitled of all, angrily questioning how she could be so heartless as to let her own family struggle while she lived comfortably on her own. Natalie didn't respond. She had seen this pattern play out countless times before: the initial guilt trips, the mounting frustration, and then, inevitably, the collapse. She had spent years allowing herself to be manipulated by their dependency, always stepping in to fix their mistakes, to patch up the consequences of their reckless spending. But not this time. Days passed, and soon, the messages took on a different tone. Her parents, realizing she wasn't giving in, began reaching out to other relatives, hoping someone would pressure her into helping. But Natalie had anticipated this too. She had already spoken to her aunt, the only family member who had ever truly understood her situation. When the call finally came, her aunt's voice was quiet, almost resigned. She told Natalie that her parents were on the verge of losing the house. The bank had sent a foreclosure notice, and with no savings and no credit left to borrow from, they were running out of options. For a brief moment, guilt threatened to creep in. The house she had once called home was slipping away, and she could stop it with a single transfer. But then she reminded herself of all the sacrifices she had made, all the times she had put their needs before her own, only to be met with entitlement rather than gratitude. They had taken her generosity for granted, treating her not as a daughter but as a financial safety net, one they had never once considered how to live without. When her aunt hesitated on the phone and asked if she would help, Natalie took a deep breath. The easy answer was yes. Sending money would silence the noise, end the pressure, and stop the guilt, at least for now. But deep down, she knew it would only be temporary. It would only delay the inevitable. So instead, she said, "No, I'm not." There was a pause, and then, to her surprise, her aunt simply sighed and replied, "Good. They need to learn." That night, as Natalie lay in bed, one final text came through from her mother. It wasn't another plea for help or an apology for years of manipulation. It was a simple, cutting message. "I hope you're happy. You ruined us." Natalie stared at the words, letting them settle. Then, with a quiet exhale, she deleted the message and blocked the number. She wasn't happy, but for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. As the days turned into weeks, Natalie found herself adjusting to a newfound sense of freedom, one that was both unfamiliar and exhilarating. The absence of constant financial demands, emotional manipulation, and endless guilt lifted a weight she hadn't even realized she had been carrying for years. Without the pressure of supporting her family, she finally had the chance to focus on herself for the first time in her life. She threw herself into her work, taking on projects that excited her rather than ones she had chosen simply because they paid well enough to sustain her family. With extra savings that no longer disappeared into someone else's pockets, she finally moved into a beautiful apartment that felt like home, one that was entirely hers. She decorated it in warm, inviting colors, filled it with plants, and let it reflect the person she was becoming. She traveled, not extravagant, luxury vacations, just simple, meaningful trips to places she had always wanted to see but had never allowed herself to because there was always something more important to pay for. She wandered through quiet European streets, hiked scenic trails, and sat in cozy cafes, reading books without a single text notification demanding money. But the greatest change wasn't in her surroundings. It was in her mindset. For years, she had measured her worth by how much she could give, how much she could sacrifice. She had believed that being a good daughter meant putting herself last. Now, she understood the truth. Love wasn't meant to be conditional. It wasn't a debt to be paid. Nor was it something that should be exploited. Her family, on the other hand, had learned the consequences of their actions the hard way. Without Natalie to fund their lifestyle, their financial reality hit quickly. The house was foreclosed on. The car was repossessed. The reckless spending that had once been covered by her paychecks finally caught up with them. There were still attempts to reach her. Random numbers, old friends calling on their behalf. A vague, public Facebook post from her mother, framing herself as a victim of a selfish daughter who abandoned her family. But Natalie no longer felt the need to defend herself. She had done enough. She had given more than enough. One evening, she received a text from Ryan. She almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity got the better of her. "Guess you don't care that we're struggling. Must be nice to live in your little bubble." She smiled at the irony. For years, Ryan had lived in a bubble, one of entitlement, selfishness, and financial irresponsibility. And now, when faced with the consequences of his own actions, he still refused to take accountability. Natalie didn't respond. She simply blocked the number and set her phone down. Stepping onto the balcony of her apartment, she took in the city lights, the cool evening air, the quiet sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was truly living, and for the first time in her life, she felt absolutely no regret. This story is a powerful reminder that self-worth should never be sacrificed for people who only take without giving back. Natalie spent years carrying her family, believing love meant financial support, only to realize that true love should be mutual, not transactional. By walking away, she didn't just free herself, she proved that boundaries are essential. Even with family. What do you think? Should Natalie have cut them off sooner? Or was her decision too harsh? Comment 2 if you support her choice. Or 7 if you think she should have handled it differently. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Reddit Story for more incredible stories like this.